Welcome to another episode of the Sports Business Leaders Podcast. Today, we have a very special guest, Tanner Maddocks. Thanks for coming on, Tanner.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Tanner's a Division I quarterback at Villanova, founder of Athlete Squared, a platform for young athletes to train directly from college athletes, and also the founder of Media Icon, a fast-growing media agency helping athletes and entrepreneurs build their brands. Before launching Athlete Squared, Tanner built multiple six-figure businesses in NFTs and athletic fashion, all before the age of 20. Now, through Athlete Squared, he's helping college athletes turn their experience into mentorship for the next generation, while also scaling those businesses that he's working with Media Icon. Not only this, but he's also been recognized by the Philadelphia Business Journal as one of the region's top young entrepreneurs. So Tanner's really a part of this next wave of athlete entrepreneurs shaping the future of sports, media, and business. Tanner, we're obviously today seeing a lot of athletes in business, from people like Serena Williams with Serena Ventures. We have LeBron James with Interrupted, Tom Brady, TB12. So you, as an athlete, a college athlete at Villanova, you've launched Athlete Squared. How did you approach building a real business while managing the demands of not only being a college athlete, but you're also a husband and a father? And what gave you the confidence to start all this so early?
Yeah, that's actually a really, really good question. I take a approach. This is actually something we were talking about at a sports business events down in Philadelphia, or I was actually up at Penn State. Is really like the reason behind why I do what I do. And there's, I know there's a lot of things that I do. I recognize that about myself. But is really like God has opened a door for me. And when I was in high school, there was like kind of like the first door for me. I went to a really, I guess, below average high school if you want to play college sports. We didn't even really have a winning program. And I knew I was like, hey, I want to play Division I. I realized I had this talent, this gift that God has given me, and I wanted to take it to the highest level. And I went to find a trainer, couldn't find a trainer, and then so I just ended up training from watching college athletes. I found huddle highlights, any type of video I could of them playing, training, to train myself, figure out how can I make myself make the same plays they can. My logic was, if I can do that, if I can put the same stuff on tape, I can get recruited the same and, potentially end up in that same spot. And I was right. I committed to Villanova, first Division I player. And really what happened was I got to college the same year that NIL became a thing. And I just really saw the gap and the opportunity. I think, as most entrepreneurs talk about, is like timing is a lot of it. And the way that God just allowed that to line up, it was actually the same summer that I committed was the same summer. It was actually the same month that NIL became a thing. And then by the time I got to college, I was a little bit more familiarized with it. And then after I got to talk to my teammates, I kind of saw this opportunity. So that was really how it got started, was my own life experiences, and then getting to college and the timing of it. And then, having 90 potential customers on any, or, potential creators on any given day at my disposal to talk to and ask them about their pain points. And I had my finger on a pulse, in a sense, as about as close as you could. Um, as far as like managing it, throughout high school, I actually built an NFT company. I ran a clothing brand. I did a bunch of different things, and I just was always like, I need something to do. I grew up. I don't play video games. I don't really have. I would say not too much of a social life, in a sense of, like I hang out with my buddies every once in a while, but most of my time is spent doing something. I enjoy working, so for me, it's not really like a how do I balance it kind of thing. It's more of like I enjoy, just as much as most kids find time to play 7 hours of video games. I enjoy building a business. I find that fun, and I feel like that's really where God has called me, is to use those skills to try to do something bigger than myself, use it for His glory. And at the end of the day, that's what ended up happening with Athlete Squared and building it. And honestly, like. One thing I really stick to is if God's going to bring you to it, He's going to bring you through it. And I felt that just like the other businesses that I ran, this was something that God was opening the door on. I actually tried closing the door on my own. I actually asked myself the same question that most people ask me, is like, should I really be starting this as a college athlete? Like, realistically, like, should I be doing this? I was newly married at the time. I was like, I'm playing college football. Should I throw another business? Should I throw a business on top of this? And I actually tried to shut it down, and God just kept opening the door to get it back up and going. And once I stopped resisting the way that He was trying to lead it, we ended up where we're at now, and doing pretty well.
Yeah, no, this is awesome, Tanner. I think the biggest takeaway from what you just said there, it's hustle's in your DNA, and that's what makes a great entrepreneur. And the other thing that's pretty cool here is that you obviously have your finger on the pulse. You yourself, you were a consumer of you were a youth athlete and you were a consumer of what you're building right now. So I think that's really the best way for any entrepreneur to build something. It's to know just really on a deep level, understand what your customers are truly looking for. And so on that same vein, we're talking about your startup with Athlete Squared. There's so many different features, there's things that you can be working on with the company. There's always a new partnership, a new content idea, a new feature, like we said. But how do you personally decide what's most important to focus on with Athlete Squared, and like what's actually moving the needle? And how has that approach to prioritization evolved as you've started to gain more experience and traction?
Yeah, I think it comes down to one thing is, you're building a solution to a problem. And when that's like your main focus the entire time, it's just, it's what's moving the needle is really what is getting you closer to that solution. What is relieving pain from our ideal customer. So that's really how we think of it. We really built this with college athletes. We worked with them every step of the way. And we're able to like really nail down like, hey, this is the pain points that we're solving for you. And instead of telling them like, hey, these are your pain points, we let them tell us what their pain points were, and we built from there. We pivoted this idea, almost was actually 4 complete rebuilds to where we're at today, all backed by our users. Once we got users on the platform, and before that by our potential customers.
Yeah, what you just said there, talking about understanding what the customers are saying and shifting and evolving as you go on. And I love what you said there about entrepreneurship and building a business is all about creating a solution to a problem and not the other way around. And I think a lot of people have it flipped. And from my experience, and it sounds like you've also experienced this as well, it's a lot of times putting those puzzle pieces together and then working backwards from what are those problems and how can we bridge that gap between what that ideal outcome and what these problems are. And then how important has vision been for you as a founder, and what would you say staying true to your mission, because you're a faith-centered guy, you talk about creating solutions to these problems. So like how do you stay true to your vision when thinking about all those, like we said in the last question, like all these new things that you could be doing?
Yeah. I mean, number one is as a business, as Athlete Squared is I think the job of a founder, is to be the keeper of the vision, be the keeper of the mission. Your job is to bring on people that are better than you to help you run that and achieve that, and to pursue that mission and vision. But nobody is going to be as driven by a mission or a vision as you are. There's nobody that's going to remember that and know what that feels like, right? For myself is, we brought on guys, and they were fortunate enough to bring on guys that had some sports background, but like I was user case one. Like there's nobody that's going to find a more personal connection to this vision and mission. So my job is to, number one, keep that mission and vision. And as you know, with startups, right? There's the ups and downs, the twists and turns. You somehow end up upside down. Your job is, even with all of that happening, is to keep your eyes on the mission and keep everybody else. Hey, we're mission driven, right? Um, and that's really it. Is like your vision is, one thing we always talk about is we're mission over money. Is like that's what we're building as a business. Is we're building this platform. Is like at the end of the day, yes, it's training. From a young athlete, or from a college athlete to a young athlete. But what we say is like we are creating opportunity for young athletes to train from those that went before them, right? Those that have already achieved what they want to achieve. They've already walked the steps that they want to walk. They went through the recruiting process. They went through the hard summers of training. They've made the jump, right? It's the same principle in business. If I don't know how to do something, I go to somebody who's done it before. I go to somebody who's better than me. And this is the same thing. That was the same approach that I had, was I want to find somebody better than me. And the college athletes were the answer. And we're providing opportunity on the inverse, for the college athletes to monetize who they are. Like I'm a college athlete now, and I've spent the first 20 years of my life, at least 15 years of my life, just obsessing over the sport, trying to learn everything I can to become the best player that I can, and now I can monetize that for being me, and that's all thanks to the NCAA NIL rule change that happened in 2021. So I mean, as a vision from that and vision and mission from a business standpoint, that's number one. Is like I'm so close to it. But in the same way, with just being a faith-centered business, is I do what I do. Like I said earlier, is because God opened that door. I didn't open it myself. This is something that God has allowed me to not only see but pursue, and then has just every step of the way provided for whatever we've needed. If you want to build out tech, you need a developer. I have no developing background at that point in my life, and we happen to have our guy Harrison, who's still with us, say, hey, I'll do it for equity. Let me come on and build this, and like that opportunity that not it doesn't happen all the time. So just God opening the doors for us. So keeping that as a center of our business, as a whole, is something that's important to us as well. And it's also my job as the founder.
Yeah. So I think what you were saying there, definitely a lot to unpack. But one of the biggest things that I think, definitely, I just thought about when you're saying, I read a book recently. It was Arnold Schwarzenegger talk. It was called Be Useful. And he talks about having that crystal clear vision. And I think I might be butchering this, but one of the quotes, it talks about if he could see it, he thought it could be achievable. Like if he could visualize it in his head as a kid in Austria that he was going to be a world champion bodybuilder, like he could achieve it. And he every single day took those steps daily to put in the work and see himself as that champion. And I think that's what it takes to continuously day in and day out. And the other thing you said in a previous answer, which I thought was great, was just talking about how you don't really have the typical hobby, which is I can definitely relate to that too. I'll talk to people and I'll say, I'm working until 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And it's like, okay, well, we could be watching sports, we could be doing other things, but when you have this vision of something, you want to work towards it and it's fun and it's enjoyable. Um, yeah, I think that's great, Tanner. You're
Yeah,
hitting the
an
nail on the head.
analogy we use is basically like I use this analogy with other founders. I use it with our company. Is like we have an end goal, right? We want to get from point A to point B, right? Point B is where you're trying to. That's the vision. That's the mission, right? And if you get in a car and like it's the same thing that Arnold is getting at is like if I'm the founder and I get in a car and the windshield is just completely like fogged up, how am I supposed to get from point A to point B? And I got, a developer, I got investors, I got other people in the car with me. How am I supposed to safely get them? It's not only safely, but you know what I'm saying? Like the point is like my job is to be the one that can see, and I can direct everybody else and steer the car, however it may be. But if you don't have a clear vision or a clear mission, it's very easy to get distracted by features, money, partnerships, everything else that comes along the way that do happen during startup, that startup phase, and distract you from that vision or mission.
We talk about this ad nauseum. Just going, Jake Voorhees, my co-founder at Sports Business Leaders, we're obsessed with connecting innovators in sports to bridge that gap. As a startup founder myself, before doing Sports Business Leaders, I had the startup coach tools, and that's why I was really interested in what you've been up to, Tanner, because I was also in the football world with my startup, and just giving the founders the resources that they need is our mission, and I think that's a huge part to that success. So, with all that said, Tanner, any last words or pieces of advice you'd want to give to the audience or even somebody who's a younger version of yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, the biggest thing is the people in your business, whatever you do, your startup, they're the most important, right? Is like, the people that you build it with are going to make it worthwhile. Number one, they're going to be the people that drive you. But something as simple as like just, you know, not seeing eye to eye with somebody, it doesn't mean that you have to always agree. I'm just saying in general, if you don't see eye to eye with somebody, it makes it really hard to build a business with them. One thing that I'm fortunate enough to have is through Athlete Squared and Media Icon and really everything else that I've done, I've had the same 3 or 4 guys with me every time. And just to have that level of connection, that level of trust is really, really important. But you're not going to be able to build a business on your own. This isn't a one man thing. You're going to need multiple people that come alongside of you, mentors, advisors, people to point you in the right direction. But your team is going to be there with you and building with you. They're going to be in the trenches with you. So if you take that analogy to the literal sense, is just pick who you want to be in the trenches with and pick them wisely.
Yeah. Yeah, you talked about putting people around you that are more talented and even smarter than you are. And I think that's genius. That's exactly what it should be. Thanks again, Tanner. How can the audience stay in touch with you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram. My Instagram is just first and last name Tanner Maddocks. And my LinkedIn, same thing. Um, you can always reach out, and I always answer LinkedIn messages, anything. Pretty easy to reach.
Cool. Awesome, Tanner. Well, we'll really appreciate you again being on the show. We'll see you at the next event, and thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.